Before you listen to this episode of the Football Journeys podcast with yet another inspiring guest, we have a few favours to ask. The success of this podcast depends on its reach. If you enjoy the podcast, please do what you can to promote our hard work. Give us a 5-star rating, leave a nice review, tell your friends, or promote us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and we're still on the other place too. Find us on @JourneysPod. You might even find us on TikTok these days. Even just a like on our clips, trailers and posts can boost engagement and bring more listeners. Please, please, please spread the word. And if you know any brands or organisations who share our values and who might be interested in partnering with us, then please do put them in touch. Or if you know someone who has had an inspiring football journey, get in touch to tell us more. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at footballjourneys@b5consultancy.com.
Welcome to the Football Journeys podcast with me, Matt Hemsworth.
And me, Fraser Franks.
We're here in the shadow of Wembley at the studios of our partners, UCFB, and we've got a guest that befits the grandest football stage of all. As a player, Alan Cochrane briefly shared a pitch with the likes of Ardiles, Perriman and Hoddle, and noticed in the lower leagues he showed the same grace as those legends, particularly during his 3 years at Brentford. But it wasn't all flowing locks and bum wiggles, as football and retirement was hard on Alan. He's coached, he's been a firefighter, and crucially became a taxi driver, which introduced him to a young boy named Phil, a lad with Down syndrome, who inspired him to launch the Brentford Penguins, a Down syndrome team which has become the life's love of him and his wonderful wife, Vicky. Cockers, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, Matt. Shaking hands now. Welcome, Fraser.
Shaking
Thank you
hands,
so
guys.
much. I'm honoured and I'm blessed to be doing this with you guys. Thank you.
The honour is 100%
No way.
ours. When we decided we were coming back for Series 3, you know, Alan, that we had a big break because Fraser had open heart surgery, and we were really excited about coming back for Series 3, and we wrote out a list of people that we wanted on the podcast.
Okay.
And you were number 12. No, you were you were number 1 on that
I
list.
used to be in sub.
You were number 1 on that list. We really wanted to talk to you. Obviously, we came across your story because of the Penguins, and we're going to talk lots about the Penguins, but I think that doesn't injustice to you to just talk about the Penguins. The Penguins is probably the most amazing thing in your life, but it is an amazing life. And I know that you and Vicky, your wife, during lockdown did a podcast called A Complicated Man.
Birth of a Complicated Man.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that complicated man. Let's take it back to the beginning of that complicated man's life. 1963, born in Kensington. For a Kent boy like me, that sounds posh.
Right.
I'm not so sure it was.
No, definitely not a posh place at the time.
But I want to take you back to being a kid, falling in love with football, realising you're bloody good at it, and that journey from, I think it was kind of district football, Camden District, and it took you to Tottenham Hotspur in, I think, 1975. And that really, I mentioned that podcast. Anyone that listens to this podcast and loves it, then go and listen to Alan's one with Vicky. It's wonderful. It's just a couple chatting away and enjoying themselves during lockdown, which I know lockdown wasn't something you always enjoyed. But talk to us about the mini version of those early years. Talk to us about going to Tottenham Hotspur, and what it was like being a young academy boy in the 70s.
So I played for my district, Camden, and after the game, an archetypal scout with a Mac on and a flat cap come up to me, my old man, and said, "Oh, do you want to go training at Tottenham?" And I'm all over it like a rash. And I just remember it's kind of garbled memories of specific times at that time. And Spurs had the old West Stand up, and you went in a door that was just chiselled out of the stadium, and you went into a bleak under the stadium stuff. And there was a small gym downstairs and a top gym upstairs, and you were split into age groups, probably 50 kids split into 2. And it's where you learn your trade. And to be fair, at the time, 1975, I thought it was quite revolutionary because we went in and I didn't see a football, but I saw a Hessian sack, and in there was tennis balls. And we trained with tennis balls for 2 years.
And you used to play with tennis balls in the playground at school. And it was funny, I was listening to that conversation you had with Vicky about doing that. It's the same at our school because I didn't want us to break the windows.
Exactly.
So
right.
you were already ahead of the game on that.
We was already ahead of the game. The headmaster had enough of balls going through the window, hitting him on the head. So it was always tennis balls you were allowed to play with. But it was. I suppose it was a way of just learning your trade in a better way. So we never had a size 4 or a size 5, and used to dribble the ball to school and back home from school. And then there was no age groups playing in the park or in the street. I mean, I was fortunate enough to still play in the street. And there was no age groups. So you kind of learn physicality of the game, or how to overcome that physicality, because I was skinny anyway. So you learn how to deal with a bigger kid or the older kid and stuff. So it was a natural learning process for me.
But very early on, I think you were 14, talk about dealing with bigger kids. And sorry to take, we'd obviously need to take some dark moments, because then we can take it to the light moments as well. I think you were shielding the ball in the game. Big centre half came and obviously didn't intend to cause you the damage he caused you.
Yeah.
But you had, I think it's fair to say, a horrific injury at the age of 14. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, again, a memory of losing my balance and kind of falling over the ball, and the ball got trapped kind of on my knee. I went over it, and the guy landed on me, centre half, and I just heard a crack. But I didn't think anything of it. I tried to get up, and I was trying to get people to help me up. And then when I looked down, my tib and fib were at a right angle. And I'm like, there's definitely something wrong here. And the game was stopped. I don't think the game ever completed, because it took ages for the ambulance to come from Chase Farm Hospital onto the pitch. And then all I remember is like an inflatable going on the leg and then being hoisted back into the van, me and my old man in the back of the ambulance, and then getting to the hospital in my Spurs Admiral kit. Then it being all cut off of me and washed down, and then just being jabbed in the thigh for the pain. And then being told that the operation isn't going to go ahead for a few hours because the Spurs doctor is in Holland and he's going to fly in to do the operation.
Wow. And this 14-year-old kid that they're doing that for?
14-year-old kid.
Can you still see that kit? If I showed you a load of Spurs kits from the time, you'd be able to pick out that.
100%, yeah. I can see
imagine
that
quite
kit,
how evocative that would be. Now, there was one piece of information that was kept from you at that time.
Yeah.
And that was that they believed that injury was the end
for
you and your career. I think your dad was told.
My dad was told, and me and my dad are opposite in a lot of ways, but similar in grit and determination. And he was a very dogmatic character. And I'm not dogmatic, but I'm dogmatic if someone sets me a challenge. And little did I know at that age that injury would be I think that it's the catalyst of my whole life. I keep reverting back to it. So yeah, they couldn't tell about the growth bone. So some of the growth bone had to be removed. The patella had to be put back in place. I was full of staples, etc., etc. And this is pre kind of staying in bed. I literally had a back slab of lead on, swathed in bandages, and I was bedridden for 9 months. And at that age, it teaches you a lot about yourself, but you don't recognise that lot until you're much older. And then going to rehab. I was at Camden Rehab, that's no more, probably for 6 months. And then I got put on the staff of Spurs Football Club, which meant I was paid on the ground staff, which meant I worked throughout the summer. So I was doing the pitch, cleaning the terraces, putting in panes of glass in the East Stand and stuff like that, and then training intermediately. And then when obviously training started, I would go back into training.
So I guess that's their chance to have a look whether this kid's actually recovered. So get him sweeping pitches, working with the ground staff.
Yeah, how much does he want? How much does he want to be a pro, or like, you know, be an apprentice and stuff like that? Definitely, yeah.
Well, there was two things I was going to bring Fraser into the conversation on, and the first one I was going to say is, so I think it was a conversation you had with Sean. So we had a guy called Sean Whiter on our podcast that our listeners will be aware of it. Sean was hit by a drink driver and lost both his legs.
I read that.
And Fraser was about to go in for your open heart surgery, and you and Sean, you already knew this, but you and Sean had a discussion about what percentage is it mental, what percentage is it physical, and I think Sean said 70 or 80% mental. Now, obviously, we asked you about the injury, and you go into it in great detail with Vicky. It kind of really made me wince, and you think, crikey, that's got to be 80, 90% physical having to deal with that. But it's that mental element, and it was the same for you with the open heart surgery. It's like those moments you think, oh, shit, I'm not going to ever get better. I'm never going to be myself all over again.
I'd say way more than 70 or 80%. I think for speaking on what I went through, it was well into the 90s that it was mental. And it is when you're sat in a bed and your mind's going. I think for a 14-year-old kid as well, it's an outlet, isn't it? It's an escape. And you say growing up in the streets, I get this a lot now when Kensington's mentioned. I grew up in Battersea and everyone goes, God, you must have had a bit of money when you were a kid. It weren't the same Battersea as you see now. Yeah. But for a lad that's in Kensington, that football's your passion, it's an escape as well. So when that's taken away and you're sat there and you're literally bedbound, your mind naturally starts to create things. So what did that look like for you at that time?
I think probably the innocence of youth is there's you haven't got the maturity or the experience to know anything. So your every day is all I'm thinking of is like, can I fill up that? Can I piss more than 1.5 litres today as a challenge? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's that your life's very
bedbound as well.
You're bedbound. You can't move. You can't. The point. It was an old archaic form of traction. He's got a lead back on. He can't lift his leg. So instead of being in traction like you would have been normally, that's just the thing. But then coming along with that is a million things: wastage, bed sores. My ankle was out, so I could slightly move my ankle, but that locked after a while. Looking back, there was a million things. It weren't just the leg; it was your whole body was kaput.
And we must bear in mind the time, 1977, I think.
Yeah.
How isolated you must have been. You've got books and a ball in your room. It's probably about the amount of entertainment. When you think of fast forward to 2024, a young lad's in that situation. He's got his PlayStation, he's got his phone, he's got the outside world. You didn't have that. And then the other element to it is something obviously that we know about you and we'll explore with you, is the way that your brain works compared to most other people. I say most other people. A lot of people have neurodiverse ways of thinking, and I think living in your own head, as you found actually quite recently in the lockdown, it can be quite difficult. So did you experience kind of that as a 14-year-old?
That's a really good question. I don't know, because there was never that self-awareness at that time. All I knew, I had a snooker cue to change the channels. And I was like, can I get to BBC One? Can I do that? But I had a really... but what it gave me was my nan. God bless her. My nan come round every day. So I was born in Kensington, but I was raised in Kilburn. And my nan lived round the corner. Like families of the time all lived kind of nuclear. And my nan would come round and she would sit there, and she was a warm nan. And she would talk about the war. So it was my connection, and who would know later down the line that I flew a Spitfire for her. Do you see what I mean? So there's all this interconnection going on at the time. But I matured because I didn't know my granddad because he passed away. But she'd tell me about my granddad, and she would tell me about what it was like to let go of 5 or 6 kids when they had to go down to the countryside and what that was like. So I was being fed historical information when normally no kid would have really found that out about their nan, because nan was just the old person sitting in the corner dribbling type of thing. So and then when I went to rehab, I was around elderly people or people recovering from more serious injuries from me. So lo and behold, I was always connected to somebody that was giving me information at the time that was privy, but it held me in good stead, and it's connected throughout my life. It's been that connection.
I know we spoke before we started filming about spirituality, and I always bring it up. But when you have that path and you're able to look back and you go, you know, what, and in any kind of adversity you've got in life, it's like, right, what's the lesson here? What is this teaching me? And you go back to that 14-year-old that had that injury, and you look back and you say we're all interconnected. But without that injury and that difficult time, you don't have these conversations with your nan probably. You don't have that time, you don't have that connection there. So again, it's like the more that I go down this route as well, I see things, I'm like, there's a lesson here. There's a reason why this is being presented for me. And that might have been maybe some lessons in there as well, definitely, but also some gifts of going, look what I can do now. Instead of all the things I can't do, I can't go to training, I can't do this, I can't do that. And again, we relate this when we go in and speak to some of the players, but what can I do? And again, like a gift for you at that time is probably, attention, a connection with your nan. That does that come if you're still going to training all the time and don't have the injury? Not sure.
100%. And it's kind of drawing on, like even with this now, with a new, this is my second hip. But like, can ask my wife, nothing. I don't give a shit. This is the honest truth. Is like, I know, number one, I know how to self kind of rehab myself. Number one, but number two, it's just like it's impermanent. Tomorrow's another day, and I look at it like today it's a better day. I'm walking better today. What's happened today? I'm with you guys today. Why am I getting? I can't. I will never get down anymore. There's no. You can't get me down anymore because of all the experience all the experiences that you draw on to. It's almost like a bit of an insult to their experience of why I'm getting down. And I said to my wife, she came in yesterday, and I said, I had a slightly dodgy moment where I was like, forgot it. Bizarre. I do crosswords in the morning. So when my wife's gone to work, I have to prep my whole bit because otherwise I'm up and down on crutches. And I forgot my pen. And for 30 seconds, I had a bit of a moment with myself, like having a go. And then that was gone. So it's that small little things. But what you're saying is 100%. But you have to have those experiences to now draw on those to the, even pain. Like, what's your pain level? Well, my pain level was like through the roof because of my pain. I remember that pain when I was a kid, or I remember that pain. Or what's your mental capacity of pain or drudgery or whatever that is. I can draw on all that. But that's just through life experiences. And I am blessed, period. Period. And I always like to go further into it. We train every Sunday and people are like, how do you train every Sunday with the kids for 7 years? Like, where's your time on? Because you might have been out on a Saturday or whatever. I don't think of it like that. I think, how did Special K get to fucking training?
Yeah.
In a wheelchair.
And Special K, for anyone that's not seen the documentary, we're going to come back to her.
Jumped on that, sorry about that.
No, don't apologise for anything, Alan. That she's someone I really want to talk about. There are some amazing characters in that documentary and the work you do with the Penguins. But let's go back to you, because let's come to some light. And I'm going to whiz through Tottenham and take you to the first team. And I don't know how you reflect on this. You played 2 games for the first team at Spurs, and I hope you reflect on that with the glory that it deserves, and the pleasure and the pride. And how's this for a midfield? I think I'm right in saying that this is the midfield in at least one of the games you played in. Ardiles, Hoddle, Perriman, Cochrane.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, how does it feel just to even hear me say that out loud?
Again, I think it's retrospective, and my best mate's a mad Spurs fan. And before we even met, he had watched that game. So I get validation from him rather of myself, because I think when you grow up somewhere, so I went there when I was 12, and when you're growing up to your 21, 22, it's almost like you're part of the furniture, and you don't really see the wood for the trees sometimes of how special it was to train with Hoddle every single day until it gets taken away and you see the other side of things. And it's only later on, and fortunately enough in my career, I was still looking back going, fucking hell, you're teaching me that, but Hoddle was teaching me about revolutions of a football. When he's pinging a ball, the revolutions of a football are that important, because the more revolutions you put on a ball as you drive it, it sticks to someone's chest a fraction of a second longer, which gives him more time. And I'm like, come on, seriously, we're talking about world-class information. Or like Ardiles' psychology of football was unbelievable. So I will use the word blessed, and it's blessed not at the time, because I think you just don't see it when you're caught up in the moment and you're a kid growing into a man. You don't really know until it's gone what you had. And I look back now, even 2 games, people say you only played 2 games, and I'm not. It could have been 10 minutes. You were still good enough at one point of your career to be on the pitch for 10 minutes. End of story. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, well, I quite agree. And I sit here running a business with this guy, and he gets up in front of lads and says, oh, well, I never played at this level or that level. We got a picture of him playing against Man City in the FA Cup, not just the FA Cup, the round of 16.
Yeah.
So to have been on the pitch with those players, someone like me, football obsessive, would give anything to have 5 minutes on the pitch at League Two.
Yeah,
let alone
100%.
Alongside Hoddle, Ardiles and all of that. Do you remember the moment you found out you were going to play in your first team game, and who you told and how you felt?
So no mobile phones, and you wasn't. So I was in the squad a couple. So it was 30. It was actually 12 players. It was just one sub. So you would be in the squad as a kid of, say, they'd take 16 away, but you were kind of the boot boy, helping the kit man, or getting Gary Mabbutt's Lucozade because he was a diabetic. And it was all those things. And it was 2nd of January, and I'm sitting in the changing rooms at 2 o'clock. And you're told at 2 o'clock when he's read the team shout out, how do you tell your parents? My dad was always coming to the game. My dad found out when it was announced on the tannoy, and then he's had to ring my mum to get there, and she turned up in her slippers. She just had to get out with my uncle that picked her up and stuff.
Yeah, so he's had to find a phone box, put the
Find a
money
phone
in.
box, make the phone. It's bizarre, isn't it? When you
Yeah, the effort we had to go to in those days compared to how easy things are.
How easy it is now, but they're more memorable, kind of by the same token. But I just got to tell this quick story. We was boot boys, so we got 2 pros and we had to look after them. So we had to clean their boots. And at the beginning of the year, the kit man looks after the apprentices, and then you get 2 older pros to look after. And I was given Steve Archibald and Gary O'Reilly, and I got fucking Steve, but the 2 worst people. And I'm like, fuck, they're going to moan about it. Hard taskmasters. So Archibald had World Cups, and he got in, and we polished him on a Friday, and he would always inspect his boots on a Friday. So he come in, and broad Scottish accent, Alan, where's my boots? I showed him his boots, and he picked them up and he threw them on the floor. And I'm like, and walked out. And I'm like, fuck. So Johnny Weil, I spoke to Johnny, and he said, well, look, you've polished all over the Adidas signs. So I'm like, okay, Adidas signs, I'll get sellotape and I'll put sellotape on, because you used to walk around the boot room or outside just polishing, getting the boots off. Friday come around, boots, looked at them, turned them over and threw them on the floor in disgust. And he walked out. So I said, what the fuck, John? I said, I've been here for hours polishing them. The Adidas are pristinely white, even used a bit of Tipex, giving it all that one. Looked over and there was mud in the stud key. There was dried mud in the Adidas signs and in the stud key. And he said, there's dried mud. Next week, toothpick in my mouth, polishing away, turn them over, bit of Vaseline on. I can still do it now. I tell this story to my teams, picking out all the dried mud of everything and then put Vaseline because it looked shiny. He come in, the boot was presented like an Adonis in front of him. And it's sitting there like, he picked out, he looked at me and went, that'll do for me. Right? Every week. He never come in after that. He never come in. On my debut, I was pro then, and he said to me, Cockers, come and I'll take you outside. He'd take you out for a warm-up. And it sent shivers down my spine, actually. He took me outside, and I can hear the studs on the concrete. And he went, before we go out, I want to tell you something. And I said, what's that? He said, thank you for doing my boots. He said, every time I put them on, you made me feel special. And he said, I hope you didn't think I was being a real prick. But he said, that was just my way. And I tell that story constantly because it was a life lesson in small details of how you made him feel. And nowadays, people would see that as, they could even say it was a little bit of bullying, right? And I'm like, no, it was the fucking greatest lesson that I learned.
Earning the right, I guess.
Earning the right, and making, and him not even telling you, him making you work out what the fuck is wrong. I'm a Scottish international, and you dare give me boots with mud on. I'm like, fair play to him. He could have hit me, you know, and fair play to him. I tell that story about the devil's in the detail. It's your prep. Yeah. And if he's putting them boots on, and I didn't even know this. So now I'm sitting in the stand as an apprentice watching him play and score a goal and going like that. Little did I know that I played a minuscule part in that until he told me. And he waited for that right moment just to say it. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that brings back so many memories of, because I came through in just that era where that was kind of fading out, but people were still wearing World Cups and Copas.
Yeah.
And you would have, if you went over it with the polish, you'd have like the grey lines, and then you'd have the little bit where you'd have to like dub in the middle and stuff like that. But then I also I go, we say about 2 appearances, and it's not looking back going ifs and buts, but 2 appearances at that time where you have to be in the 12 best players at the club to get on the bench. Now you're having 9 subs and you could bring 5 of them on. So you're probably getting, if that's then is now.
You'd have a League Cup game now, and some kids
an extra 20
no chance of ever playing first team football will have a little go.
If it's like it was then now, you're getting an extra 20, 25 games a season because you're coming on. And I look back and I came through and there was 5 subs. So you had to go from being 17, 18 to being in, there's 4 outfield players. You've got to do quite well to get on that bench. Then it went to 7. Now it's that, and now you can bring 5 on instead of 3.
Yeah.
It's like, what an achievement to get 2 games at Spurs at that point. I would look at it and go,
Spurs team as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. I think you've nailed it. It's even me knowing that when people don't know that. It's more special to me that there was one fucking sub. So exactly what you said. That to me is more special than if there's more or less or whatever that might be.
Well, let's bring you down.
Go on, mate.
Talk to us about leaving Spurs. How did you find out you were leaving? Was it a transfer, or was it you were released? And how did you take that?
You kind of felt it. I mean, if you're in touch with yourself, you kind of felt it because the manager changed. It went Keith Birkinshaw. They had an amazing squad. I mean, all internationals, and then Keith Birkinshaw left and Peter Shreves took over, who was the assistant manager. And then you felt a vibe change. There was something, and they were a signing club, Spurs. If you look at their history, even to now to a certain extent, they were a signing club. They would bring Ardiles and Villa World Cup winners straight in, internationals. And it never really changed. And if you look at the youth team at the time, no one made it. At that team, we won everything. But all of those lads, it was bizarre. All of the youth team went on to have professional careers, whether it be Charlton or kind of Orient or Norwich and stuff. Everyone went on to have a professional career. So I remember the day, because me and my best mate, who were just back in touch with Simon Webster, we was let go on the same day, and we were playing for the reserves, and we were in our kit, and the manager come up to us and said, "Oh, by the way, you're not in my plans anymore. You're going to go on the transfer list," and walked away. And we sort of looking at each other, and it was it was bizarre. It's only bizarre when you look back at it. It's not bizarre at the time because the treatment of people were totally different. It was cutthroat. It was people come out of not the war, but that kind of that behaviour where your feelings weren't really taken. You're fucked off basically. End of story.
There was definitely a lack of understanding back then of how to manage people and how things impact you mentally, and actually how you can get the better out of people if you think about empathy and you think about how it impacts them, etc., etc. And I do think I much prefer the way that things are now.
Yeah.
But you're also absolutely right that some of the lessons learned from those old days, I think that you put it this way, Fraser, actually, we could do with some of the hard lessons from the old days, but alongside that kind of understanding of mental health issues and psychology, that kind
100%.
of stuff.
Yeah. I think there should be a mentoring system of kind of like, it's even like, with war vets going into schools and kind of talking and no holds barred telling what it's like, but then you have the buffer in between, the person of the generation that's closer to the kids that have that buffer, whether it's the right thing for that guy to say something or how far you go with telling them how it was, but just to give them that experience. And also, we're here for you. Yeah. But I think that's just having someone to talk to and leave your door open and let's talk about it.
Agreed. The more the more we improve. I'm not going to go through. I've got your Wikipedia page in front of me, which I think we're going to have to make sure we update because I don't think it's totally up to date or even does you justice at all. We're not going to go through all of the clubs that you played at. I did want to briefly touch on. I know you had a few stints out in America, but it was America straight away. There's certainly here on Wikipedia anyway. San Francisco Flyers is the next club listed after Tottenham. Does that mean you went out to the States after? Yeah,
my uncle lived out there and he was let go. And I'd never been to, this is before big travel started. Yeah. So to go to America was a big thing. And my uncle was a referee out in California and I went out there on a holiday for a few weeks and ended up staying about 5 or 6 months because I got involved actually in coaching and they had an indoor league in San Francisco that no one had ever heard of. And I was like, what the fuck is this indoor league thing? And they literally you used to burst through like paper with the San Francisco Flyers on and run on and there'd be like, there weren't a massive crowd, but you was playing like 6 and 7 aside indoors and I used to absolutely love it.
So from the old tennis balls, isn't it?
Yeah, it's back to the old tennis balls. And I don't know, you just got the Americanization of soccer with a bit more razzmatazz, and that kind of suited my personality a little bit. And then after a while, living and coaching out there, I felt that I just felt that I had something more to offer back home. It weren't the end of my story. And plus my mum and dad were kind of wanting me to come back home. I was young. So I went home. But no, again, a wonderful experience. That then, lo and behold, through joining the dots backwards, I end up back in America, which is bizarre as well.
You know, you say it suited your personality and stuff at the time. What would someone in and around that Tottenham team or this period of your life seen? Would you have been a loud person, an outgoing person at that point as well?
Yeah.
Confident?
I think the is that the right word, arrogance? Overcoming adversity when you're young, you either get really confident or you cover it up with arrogance. It can be determined as a bit of arrogance. And I'm not arrogant, that's the thing, but I can see how people saw that.
Showmanship.
Yeah, a bit of showmanship, a bit of kind of, I didn't like normality, I didn't like conforming. Like, for whatever reason that was, and that's been a trait of my character throughout my life. I've dealt with it in different ways. I could have handled stuff a lot better when I was younger. But I think because I was bored of seeing short hair. Well, why have you all got short hair? It's like nowadays, with the players actually look like all the same. They all look the same. And yet when you look at the older players, some had their shirt in, some had their shirt out, some had their shorts up, some had long hair, some had short hair. But there's a conformity now that I see within players that I don't like. So yeah, I can see why there was an arrogance at Tottenham of seeing that. I'd overcome adversity and I felt that I belonged there at times when maybe I didn't.
Well, so one of the clubs you obviously, as I said, there were a lot of clubs, but you came back and you really made your name out, and obviously you're still hugely connected with Brentford. And there's a goal that you score, and I know you know which one it will be. I don't know if you've seen it, Fraser. Go and as soon as we finish, you must go and look at it because it's Hoddle-esque, and you've got all the flowing locks, you've got this long hair, and the ball sort of on the edge of the box, and you just do this beautiful chip into the corner. It's I don't know what division Brentford were in at the time, but
it will be what is 1 now.
Right, okay, so you're in the 3rd division and you score a goal that Glenn Hoddle would have been proud of, and then you do this lovely little sort of Roger Miller-esque like bum shuffle. And for me, that sums up what you just described, is football should be beautiful, you want to be a showman, and there's a strange kind of dichotomy in your personality, this sort of real humility, and I get the impression that you do have a little bit of imposter syndrome, but also kind of want to just like wave your hands like that and say, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
Was it like that when you were playing?
Yeah, I think so. Looking back on it, I like to bring people together. So I like loveliness, if that's the right thing to say. I like to walk into a room, and even talking to them guys there, I come in here and sat down. I thought, fuck this. I want to talk to these guys. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And they're part of this. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to them because I want to know about them, and I want them to have a connection in here because it's a connection. They're not just sitting outside a screen.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
So our listeners know, shout out to our production crew here at UCFB.
Yeah, 100%.
They're just giving us a lovely thumbs up
guys.
as well. We told Alan that we'd be here early for him, and we turn up and say, Alan's already here. And he's entertaining everyone, basically.
So I think that's the reason. And I think with the Brentford crowd, because it was such a community. And when you go to Brentford, even now, it's you follow Brentford not for success, you follow for it for love. And I got that feeling. So when I used to take a corner, I'd be saying to people, right, who do you want me to hit? I'll put it on his head. Do you know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I don't necessarily think it was look at me. It was just I got a feeling from the crowd that brought everyone together. And again, I keep saying to it, 20, 30 years down the line, that's still remembered by people. Oh, we loved it when we all sung Wiggle It just a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And then the one that it goes down in folklore history that there was an old boy with a flat cap by the dugout, and he used to call me over and I'd have a swig of brandy from his hip flask. And I said, can you imagine now even doing that? And I fell into him into the crowd, and I put his flat cap on, come on the pitch playing with a flat cap, got booked. And lo and behold, his grandson, God bless it, his grandson, donkey's years down the line, said I was the little boy. And that was my granddad. Look at my Brentford tattoo. Again, connection.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre.
And then, because this is in the 80s, even in the early 90s as well, at that stage you're a throwback. It's like a Stan Bowles or a Frank Worthington. And was there a feeling that, were you conscious of the fact that you wanted to be that throwback? I think Charlie George was your hero. You were an Arsenal fan as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, whisper that now with your connections with Spurs. You wanted to be that throwback. You wanted to be that 70s style footballer that was like entertaining everybody.
I don't think it was a conscious thing. It was just, I used to watch Charlie George and was enamoured by his individuality. It was just a beautiful, in really a time where it was, you know, they were kicked to fuck. I mean, if you had any talent, you were kicked to fuck, basically. And just the arrogance of not even wearing shin pads and kind of like, you know, and just going, well, kick me. Do you know what I mean? I can take that. So I think it was that, it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just that my feeling towards that individual then was probably inherited within my genetic makeup, that I love you. Do you know what I mean? I love you. And that just reflected. So I'm probably taking in the auras of these people. I would say
as well. It's like, as kids, we play football. And then a lot of the times we become men and it becomes a career and we lose that play. And it seems like you, at this time of Brentford especially, like you managed to maintain that. When a lot of other people are very, very, like, you can still be serious and want to be ambitious, but to have that sense of play whilst you're doing it and enjoying what you're doing, it seems like you managed to keep that. I feel like I lost a little bit of that when I played, but managing to keep that and have those little moments of, and like you say, it goes back to that connection. And when you've had so many games and stuff, those are the little moments that are remembered beyond the football career.
Yeah, and I think also, I'm going to use the word fear. I think the fear was taken out of me when I was young. So I didn't really care. I didn't really care if I was released. I didn't really care if someone didn't like the assistant manager at Brentford fucking hated me, literally with a passion. Because I was the antipathy of what he didn't like, because he was a conformist and it was balls being smashed in the channels and I wouldn't do any of that. So fear was taken out of me, and my wife would probably say today, like, I have no fear of rejection or kind of what you think of me to a certain. It's not that's a oxymoron, because I do care what people think of me to a certain extent. But if I know what I'm doing is the right thing, then I definitely don't care what you think.
Yeah. If they don't like you for being you, then fuck those people.
Yeah, but I don't think that. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't mean that in an arrogant way at all. I just think you're here on a bigger mission. I'm fighting, and now I'm fighting. I'm fighting for greater souls than me.
Was that when you have no fear of being released and you're not conforming to what a manager wants? Is that because you back your ability as well at that point?
Yeah, I think growing up at Spurs, it was you were indoctrinated into playing total football. So then when I come up against not total football, I was like, what the fuck? I'm dropping deep to get the ball off the fullback, and you're just telling, not even to hit a person, hit a channel, hit a corner flag. And I knew it was wrong, and I knew, in all honesty, I would be a sacrificial lamb. But I couldn't comply to that.
Because I think a lot of young players still feel like that. You know, if you go, we do a lot of work with Tottenham, but if a lad from Tottenham goes on loan to a League Two club and they're a tidy, technical kind of player that's taught to play that way, they get lost, a lot of them. And I've seen some really good young players go to Matt supports Gillingham, so I'll use Gillingham as an example, but go to Gillingham,
get lost there.
Go to Gillingham and maybe they do then conform because they're being, you know, they maybe haven't had the adversity that you've had growing up, but they do then feel like, right, if I'm going to get in this team, I'm going to have to do what this manager wants.
Yeah.
And they end up doing themselves no justice because a 33-year-old League Two player can do what is being asked better than what an 18-year-old technical player can. How would you see that these days, and how would you help someone in that?
Sad. I think that's really sad because it's a loss of identity, and also it's a fault of the clubs to a certain extent, as in not Spurs so much, but then his only offer might be to go to Gillingham. Sorry, mate. or like a lower league team, and then he's got to survive. He's got to survive, because if he doesn't conform and survive, the result is a loss of career, or kind of where, what's the greatest loss? Is the greatest loss conforming against your the way you feel the game should be, or is a greater loss being sitting at home on a Saturday? It's a real tough one, and I've seen players go under emotionally because they are lost within that game, and in the end they go, fuck it, I'll just run about for 90 minutes and outrun people and things like that. I get it.
And you say you've seen players. I mean, effectively, you're sort of talking about yourself as well, because I know that, as I said, we can't run through every club you've been at and every experience. We probably won't do St Albans City justice, because I know, obviously, you've got a great connection there and you manage the club. But I know post-playing professionally, you really struggled. Yeah,
Brentford was just, it was beyond a joke. Like sitting there, I made 25 consecutive sub appearances, and I was the one being thrown on to do something different if that called for. And that was it. But again, like at the end of the tunnel, I was the youngest manager in the leagues. I was 29 when I was given the mantle of St Albans. And then the whole Maverick, hang on a minute, you're mad to give me that much fucking noose. Do you know what I mean? And I just played total football. It was outrageous what I did. And looking back now, and I'm still great mates with all the lads at St Albans, and I could tell you stories of just outrageous team behaviour, of turning up in fancy dress
to a game
because I wanted to and stuff like that, and then got fined because it was 1 to 11 at the time, the team sheet. You didn't have all the numbers that you could choose. And then decided to give everyone a different number, so the opposite number, so 9 become 5. So I said, you need to respect number 5, and you need to respect number 9. So I got the centre half with 9 on and stuff, and then being fined for stuff like that.
Fined?
Yeah, because you're only allowed to change so much on a team sheet. So the team sheet's given, and you're only allowed on the match day programme 2 or 3 changes max. Right. I changed all 10 things, and just the rule. If you play over 10 yards, I'm taking you off. So we're playing 5-a-side and enforced it, and stuff like that. And it was and what done again? Hindsight, the kick-in came in. I don't know if you know, but the kick-in came in where the rule. So all the new rules are given to the conference or the lower leagues to try them out. Yeah. And the kick-in was you could kick it as far as you like instead of a throw-in. And I was the only club out of 92 to not do it. I've never done it. And they stopped it.
So you had the option of throwing it or kicking it in?
Yeah, everyone kicked it. So you literally could look, and there was no offside. Now imagine that. Yeah. No offside. So what did they do? They put
everything. That's a big experiment.
It's an experiment.
Jesus.
It come from a Wenger thing. Wenger wanted the ball down, played 10 yards, and they got money for doing it, which I understood again. And God bless him, he passed away. The chairman of our league could just come up to me and said, "Who do you think you are? Not do it." I said, "I'm not doing it." I said, "I don't care."
I presume every other team was just launching it into the box.
Just launching it. Well, it was a disadvantage. It was actually an advantage to get a throw in nearer the corner flag because you could whip the ball in at an angle more. And I used to time the ball out of play. People, instead of taking on a defender, they was going to kick it off his legs for a throw in. Yeah. It was a debacle. It was terrible, and I just laughed at it. That was my first season as manager up against that. And I refused to do it, period. So we was the only team. And to be fair to a lot of the teams, some of them said, in your honour, we're just going to play total football. Until we were beating them with 10 minutes to go, and they just said, launch it because we're losing. So, yeah.
And what you described, some of those behaviours, they're very prevalent in you now. And I'm trying to work out how to best describe it with you, but you do what's at the front of your head. Yeah. And you've spoken, I know you did a very good article with The Guardian, you spoke about your Tourette's, and I don't think you're diagnosed with Tourette's, but you've just got this thing in your head that you can't help yourself but say stuff out loud, do stuff, and even if that's going to embarrass Vicky or be the wrong thing to say at the wrong time, you can't help yourself. And it's that sense of mischief and fun and love, actually, that's in you about that. So it's quite heartening to hear that you had that even when you were a manager of a football club.
Yeah. I think also what it is testing especially new people. Like, because I'll just stare them in the eyes and ask the most outrageous question. But it's knowing their limit of where I go with that one. You've got to understand the person. Fuck, I fucked up there. I won't go there again. But my way of doing it is to be the most outrageous at first and then kind of come back. The problem lies is if they let you get away with the outrageousness straight away. That's where the problem lies.
Yeah. Which I was going to say brings me nicely to why you are so attracted to working with people with Down syndrome, because obviously they are very much like that, but we're not going to get there yet, because I just want to take you to what leads you to that point. And one thing I don't think, I know you've mentioned, but I don't know too much about, you ended up at first, so you ended up as a taxi driver, but before that you were a firefighter.
No. After that I was a firefighter.
Okay, so let's talk about being a taxi driver first, because that is a really important, profound moment.
Yeah.
So you're a taxi driver, and we mentioned this lad Phil, teenage boy with DS, with Down syndrome, and you were asked to regularly ferry him around, I think.
Yeah.
And it goes to the Alan Cochrane who breaks the rules. I think Phil ended up sat in the front seat with you listening to house music.
Yeah. It was so I had an old... I blagged this job in Surrey, because you're supposed to know your area and stuff. But fortunately, the controller was a West Ham supporter, and he had heard of me. So he was a great football fan, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll get you to where you need to go." But where I had an old Volvo estate, I used to get the airport runs to Gatwick and Heathrow. And he said, "I've got a multi-drop for you this day. You've got to pick these kids up from these locations and take them into school." And the first kid that got in, he's got Down syndrome.
And what did you know about Down
syndrome? Nothing, period. Nothing. Second kid got in DS, third kid DS. I had about 5 or 6 kids in there with DS. But this kid got in the front, and I was, again, pushing boundary. I had house and dance music, and the kids would be rocking. And we'd get up at the school loud, and I'd have this particular track on, and the kid wouldn't get out. Right? So that's the start of DS. And then every day for like a period of time, you'd pick the same, but this kid would be adamant about getting in the front. He would get in the front. And we just kind of bonded over this, and we would be laughing. The humour within DS is... it's bizarre. It's fucking hilarious. And he'd be there. And then I'd get out. We'd be chatting and still knew nothing about DS. And then I'd get out, and I'd always have a ball in the car, because I had I was taking like under 14s for training in the local area. Always had equipment in the car, ball out, playing little 1-2s, blah, blah, blah. And he loved it. And then met his family, or met his mother and father. And then we would just sporadically play football together and stuff. I left the cab company after about 6 months, and I get a phone call from the controller. He said, "I don't know if you know, but Phil was passed away through complications to do with DS. Still didn't know anything about DS." And I think it was it's a moment in your life where it doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of vowed, like really deep within me, that when I get a bit more time, because I was really busy with a young family and just trying to make ends meet at the time, that's why I was a cab driver, was that I'm going to research this a little bit deeper. And then fast forward, 18 years, 20 years.
So this was like what, late 90s that you met?
Yeah.
So I can see the house music in my head, probably Baby D, Let Me Be Your Fancy, that kind of
all
stuff.
All that, yeah, you got it.
So then I just want to briefly touch on being a firefighter, because it's it's a right angle move, isn't it? I mean, you've been a professional footballer, you've then been a taxi driver, then you become a firefighter. Yeah. I mean, how on earth did that come about?
Because there was an article in an old magazine. I was in no man's land. I had a job on the print. In all honesty, I was working probably 17 hours a day. So I had many jobs, no education, left school when I was 14 with the injury. And just thought, fuck it. Everything, you go into fight or flight mode, and mine was always work your bollocks. Like, your work strategy. You're not going to earn a lot of money by doing one job. You've got to do 2 or 3 jobs. And just get through that period of time. And then I was reading an article, and it said, if you weren't a footballer, what would you think you would be? And it said a fireman at the time, a fireman.
Oh, what, in those like pen pictures?
In the pen pictures. And I'm like, light bulb moment.
Make it true.
Yeah, so applied. There was and then it took me 3 years, because they had to get all my old injuries through. And fortunately, back in the day, that injury that I had when I was a kid was on microfilm, and they didn't destroy them at the time. So I had all the x-rays of these injuries, blah, 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 blah. And then went through a process of kind of train. There was I'm not good at written exams, but there's 5 written exams and then 5 physical exams, and I passed. But it took me 3 years to get in, and then absolutely fucking loved it because it was football. We were all. It was a 2-pump station, which means 2 fire engines. So we had 12 mainly guys. We had a couple of girls on there as well, but all football orientated. And I got back for the first time the thrill of pre-match thrill. So when the bells went down, you didn't know what was going on. You got a call sheet, and you're like, yeah, love it.
It's like team together, call to action. You've got to physically back up your mate.
You got to be emotionally on point. Period. And the call sheet is nothing compared to when you get there. So when you get there, you're looking at your officer and you're going, right, get your breathing apparatus on, fucking get in there, deal with it. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Before this point, when you are coming away from professional football and you're trying your hand in management, then taxi driving, then doing other jobs in between, and saying you had a young family as well, how difficult was that point of going from being a professional footballer into, people call it normal society, but going from the identity of I'm the young lad that's been at Spurs, that's played professionally, to then going into this second phase of your life?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I think I covered up a lot through working hard. So I would literally I was 2 a.m, started my paper, so I used to pack papers at Wimbledon, bundle them up and then go on a round of delivering papers to all shops and stuff. Get on my motorbike, go straight in there, and I was a courier for credit cards, straight in there. So I was doing and I was so tired, Frage, that I would get in. I slept in my boots, in all my gear, so I didn't have to get changed to get up at 2 a.m. and then get changed and shower again. So I think I lost myself within just working so hard to achieve a goal. And then moments of downtime was really tough. I mean, fucking, what am I doing? I've got a family, I've got commitments. I'm working really, really hard. It's a mile away from what I'd been doing. And then probably if I'm blunt, alcohol, self-medicating, because you would get certain periods, so you'd work 4 on and 4 off nights and stuff like that, and you'd be, your sleep pattern was, I use it as an excuse you would do with alcohol, but I can't even sleep now because I'm used to getting up at 2 a.m. and it's now in the morning, and I would self-medicate with alcohol and stuff and lose myself within that, just to get through what I was getting through. I would definitely say, bless in a way, that I was so tired through work, I didn't have that moment of time really to think too much about what you've come from and what you are now.
I've got 2 questions based on that. 1, what's your relationship with alcohol now? And 2, is that very symptomatic of the way your brain works? You just have to be busy all the time.
So my wife says to me, you've got to cut yourself some slack sometimes. I'm not good with praise. People praise saying good things, and I'm not good with praising myself. Although I have learned, she said, you've got to sometimes, if someone's offering you praise, just thank them, which I do. I'm a big thanker now, and blessed. But it's my proudest moment giving up alcohol, period. And because of my brain, it's all or nothing. And my wife, God bless her out there, I just went to her one day, there was a half bottle of wine in there, really good wine as well, by the way. And I just went, fuck it, I ain't drinking anymore. And that was it.
When was that?
Babe, probably 3 years ago. I thought it was 6 months. She said to me, I said to someone the other day, it was 6 months. She says, it's 3 years ago.
That's the same as you?
Yeah, mine's just over 3 years.
I couldn't believe it. It felt like, and again, connection. There's nothing in this world that would ever make me go back to it because the shutters come down.
Well, I know you don't like praise, but well done.
Thank you very much, mate.
It's quite symptomatic as well, though. I find I wasn't I was quite a late drinker when
me too.
Because you're a professional footballer, that's your focus, and you know that ain't great for your performance. But so you'll take it and leave it.
1980s, mate. They were all getting drunk back then.
Oh, they were,
yeah. True. But also, you are, to get to the level that you play at, you have to have a level of obsession and all in. And it's for me now, reflecting, I'm bit naive for us to think that you can just do that with certain things. If you're all in, that's going to bleed into other areas. And then if you have got like a period in your life where lack of identity, structure's gone, this is gone, but then you've got this one thing here that long term, yes, it causes issues down the line, but for short term, it's like a painkiller. Like you said, self-medicating.
Yeah.
This thing here can help me sleep, it can switch me off, and exact same. I had all them kind of excuses, and it worked for a little bit. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people get to. There's a point where it serves you, but then it stops serving you and comes at a cost.
100%.
Yeah. Look, if drugs, alcohol, drugs, social media, whatever else weren't good, you wouldn't get addicted to them. That's the thing. It's like they're an outlet. They make you feel good for a short period of time, but it's what they end up taking away, which is so important.
I think you kind of like, you just want that mental torture to stop. Like that little fucker in there that's rattling about, giving you all the wrong, like, self kind of like you mentally self-harming yourself by like thinking you're a prick and everything that comes. And then literally the mistress in the bottle, I used to look at that, right? And if that was vodka, I'd look at it and go, do you know what? In 5 seconds, this all can all go. It can all go. And I just go like 5 seconds, glug it. 6 gulps I used to take, and I knew that it would all go. I'd fall asleep, or that would be go for that moment in time. But it's not the answer. It's the answer to it's again, it's self-awareness. And the other route that I've gone down now is a long, sometimes boring fucking route of meditation and kind of and listening and rocking a little bit and doing that, whereas that was really simplistic. But all the great things in life, you have to take time and mature with.
Yeah. There's nothing like a pleasure earned.
No.
Which I think that's a really beautiful way to bring us to the Penguins, because there's no little hard work involved in that. I think it was 2017. I think you and Vicky had a conversation. Where was the brainwave from? Was it you? Dan, who's one of our trustees, again, I met in America. I asked him some fucking weird questions, and I knew he was my boy in New York. And then when we come back from America, he come back and we reconnected, and then he come and live with us for a couple of years. And we used to have there's an Irish pub in Ealing that does the best Guinness, and for anyone that drinks Guinness knows, you know where to get a really, really good Guinness. And we used to say to Vic, is it all right to go? We used to call it the Star Wars pub because it was the licorice, all sorts of human beings in there. It was bizarre, but everyone got on. And we used to say to Vic, is it all right if we go down the pub? And Happy Feet was out at the time, and we used to walk all the way to the Irish pub round the corner with Happy Feet, like penguins. And we sat down there one day, and we used to mull over certain ideas, and it was just that moment. And I can't even say, Matt, the moment, but we sat there where you're a bit more lucid and things start happening about and I was coaching at a really high level. I was at Cambridge University and stuff like that, but I wasn't fulfilled. And then it come out about Down syndrome and Phil. I said, you know what I'm going to do? He said, what's that? I said, let's start a Down syndrome team. And then we went home to Vic, and she said, that's a really, really good idea. And that's how the Penguins started. Probably it was Guinness. It was 2 pints of Guinness, a bit more lucid, where you're reflecting on things, and went, hang on a minute, 20 years ago, this is my thought pattern, and I'm going to do it. And I literally, again, my impulsiveness. The following week, I had training, got vouchers out, got posters out, and then hired a hall. That was it. Wow. How many people came to you?
4.
It's enough, though, isn't it?
It's enough. It wasn't the quantity. It was just, and also the bullshit of it all, really, because I'd been to other clubs to watch their DS, and I'd even watched online, and I'm like, this is fucking really, really easy. Got loads of kids. Charlton are playing West Ham. Charlton are playing, and I'm like, wow, I can. This is cool. And then I had 2 days of DS training, and really they told you what you couldn't say, the PC way of dealing with it and all. And I remember going into, we had not a gym, a school sports hall, so enlarged gym, and 3 sets out, all the cones out, laid out, going over me head what's coming. And the first kid run into the room, corduroys and a jumper on, doing bird impressions. And I kicked all the cones away. and just went, fuck this is bullshit, I'm just going to wing it. And the truth of the matter is I winged it for 1.5 years. And I winged it by watching the parents' interaction with their child, and then I kind of mimicked that. And then I learnt more and more about DS, and you can't learn enough because every child, the beauty of it is the comprehension level is totally different to what we are. So they have a 20% to 80% comprehension rate. So I've probably got 2 kids that could sit here now and hold a conversation. The rest of the kids couldn't do that. Yeah. And then it's learning every single thing in between, and also the secondary ailments that they come with that you have to understand. Yeah. And without getting too emotional or deep about it, these timelines, they're on different timelines to all of us. You would understand your timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we mentioned Special K earlier, and I really want to talk about her because there are some things you can see in her where she has got some complications that come with it. I know in the documentary, The Mighty Penguins, and anyone listen, please go and find that and watch it. It's amazing. In that documentary, I think she's in a wheelchair a few times. She doesn't have any hair, which I would presume is a consequence of some of the complications. But then she brings with her, we use this word spirituality when we're talking before we start recording. There's something magic about her. There's something calming about her, and there's this aura, this love that she brings that is just otherworldly. And one of these days, Fraser's going to turn me into some kind of spiritual being because I'm still an avowed atheist and all of that. But it's people like her that really help me to start changing my mind and saying I'm wrong. Tell us about
her. I describe her as, you use ephemeral ways of describing her, but the thing that most people would understand is an angel. So when I use the word terminology angel, I'm doing it to evoke something within you. The reality is that when you're with her, she's been here before, and there's an empathy within her that she has of, she knows she's been here before. And she's 16, but it's like she's got her nan in her and her great nan and her parents, and I am honoured and blessed and loved to just know this kid, and I've got 50 of the fuckers.
Yeah, so I've got a list of some of the stars of this documentary. Of the stars. Yeah, I mean, so many people will know Woody, of course, and I mean respectfully to Woody, I'm not going to talk about him because he's had his moment in the sun, and he's a big superstar, and he deserves everything that he's got. But you've got one lad, Big D, who was part of your team, and now he's part of your coaching team. Yeah, I mean, he was one of the older kids when we first started, and we get a phone call from his parent, and I do everything in stages, so whether I'm volunteering or meeting new kids or new parents, it's just a process. And I just took him on his own in the park one day and just said, right, I have to figure out where he's at as a person. And straight away I could see that he was a bit of a lad. He was DJ, model, blah, blah. And I went, you know what, you'd be a good role model for the kids. So he started off as a player. And then I quickly I went through a book with him. So he's got a book, a coaching book, not the atypical coaching book, but he has to draw his pictures and say why he's doing stuff. And now he's been with us 3 years, and the kids love him, and he's doing our DJ party on Sunday because it's our 7th birthday. And he's something that the other kids can look at and go, that can be me, because I have timelines, and because of different age groups, and we don't turn away any age group or disability. But not only do the kids have to see it, but the parents have to see, well, that's my child in a few years' time and stuff. So Big D is kind of like a catalyst for the next coach coming through. Touch on that parents' point. That's really, really important, because Fraser and I were talking previously, and he was talking to someone who had a sibling with Down syndrome, and I think you'd ask the question, is he all right, whatever else, and the response from the sibling is he all right? Of course he's fucking all right. It's the rest of us that struggle. And I think having a kid with Downs is a struggle. Those parents, to be able to bring their kids to you and have them part of that community, and also see what their child is capable of. So someone like Big D, yes, a lot of the players will see him and think, I could do that. But so many of the parents must see what Big D does and think, that's what my boy, my girl could do.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, I think the kids are the kids. So the kids, it's a bit like, I always describe it, it's very similar to a football club. The players are the players, right? But it's the outside people, the parents that are looking at their young boy and it's the same multiplied by 1,000 with the children. The beauty of the film, if I can answer the question in a converted way, is the beauty of the film is it really highlights 3 individual cases of what parents go through. Now times that by 50 kids, 50 parents, 50 different disabilities, and highlighting the fact that there's no right thing with DS. They've all got their own individual pathway that they're going through. So what's not highlighted in the film with Special K is they have to pay someone 6 days a week to watch her breathe because she stops breathing. Yeah. And on the 7th day, one of the parents watches it because they both have to work and stuff because she stops. And they have to either turn her over or put her mask back on her. And she's just had like a revolutionary thing done through an American surgeon that's given her a couple of hours extra sleep when you're talking about 3 or 4 hours sleep during the night. So that's the little nuggets that I all know that no one else knows, right? So for the parents, Vanessa, Charlie's mum, says it beautifully in the film when she says, I've got friends and I don't have to explain my child's actions. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Because you can imagine I've had horror stories of them going to other clubs, and I'm not going to sit here and knock other professional clubs for what they do because they do what they do. But they're scratching the meant service of the tick box culture. Mm. Yeah, and I've had kids go to Chelsea and sat in a puddle because the younger coaches don't know what to do with that child. Because I think you have to have a grasp of life to understand these children. And it's not given to mainly the younger coaches at community level, all younger coaches, because they have to work hours and not get paid like loads and loads of money. And I get that, and that's fine. But you're only scratching the surface. I'm blessed because not only do I know every child and every ailment that they have, but I get all the beauty that no one else can get until you know the parents and the children.
And that's why, and I'm just pointing at my notes for anyone that's not watching this, all of this is what leads you to this. It's all of these, the tapestry of your life experience, particularly the bad moments, that then lead you to this point where you could have, as a 21-year-old, left Spurs and tried to do this, and it would have been a lot more difficult because although, you'd had that situation when you were 14, you still haven't been through enough and done enough self-reflection and understanding yourself and other human beings to be in this position, to be the person that you are with these characters like Peanut and Charlie, Louis, Ollie. And I know you don't like praise, but seeing the way that you are with them, seeing the things that you've done to change their lives, the families' lives, and I think it's really important we give Brentford a lot of credit as well, because it's not just that, and this is the most important thing, that getting together every week, and that's obviously, that might be the humdrum, but it is the most important thing. But those big things that they've done, they've been flag bearers. I was going to say at Griffin Park, showing at the community stadium. They've met the Beckhams, and there's an S on the end of that, but I know that your view is it's Romeo rather than David that's most important of that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They played in Europe.
Yeah, away win.
Talk to us about the Beckhams, actually. It's really important. Fraser and I have met Romeo, and Fraser's had quite good interactions with him. And we were talking about what it must be like to be Romeo, to have a dad who's a real hero. I think he's a massively underrated footballer as well, because of the kind of everything that goes with David and Victoria. I think people forget that he was, almost self-handedly dragging England through games, and he was incredible. One of the best passes of the ball anyone's ever had. And then we think it's quite tough for Romeo to follow that. Yeah. But I think the Penguins has been one of Romeo's really massive outlets. We can talk about it now because it's now been announced that he's been ambassador, but I know that he'd been doing work with you guys even prior to that.
Yeah. No. It come about, I didn't have a Scooby. I mean, we was, the club wanted to do a video at the ground, and you just thought that was normal for the kids. They was doing a video of the Penguins. And then little did I know that I was even getting presented with an award, but it's funny, I smelt Beckham before I saw him. They crept up behind where the team photo was being done, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like a Father Christmas moment. And you're like, what the fuck? What's going on? You smell good, by the way. And then again, my Tourette's is kicking in. I'm going, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, and all that. And my fucking bullshit coming out. And then it was he give us like 2 hours, and it wasn't token. The thing you got from I call him Papa Bex. The thing you got from him was he was genuinely interested, genuinely caring. You can ask him anything. The mums were kind of melting, you know. It was hilarious. It was so funny. And then just joining in with the Penguins, like it's online, you can see it, just how kind of au fait he was with understanding of the children and stuff like that. And then the whole journey of Romeo, where I just thought it would be a better idea. I didn't ask him. Louis sent him a video. Like, we've got one of the kids who's just amazing.
He says it's your mate Louis.
It's your mate Louis, yeah. He said, "Oi, come on." He said, "We want you to be like an ambassador. What's your answer?" Well, what are you going to say? You know.
Yeah, good luck saying no to that one.
Yeah, it was a process, and I get the process. Do you know what I mean? I'm not an idiot, but for me, it's a two-way street. As in, I don't know, a fatherly thing kicking in with him as well, knowing like it sounds a weird thing to say, really, but knowing that how much it must be tough for him and all of them. Because if you want something, you can have it. Or if you want X, Y, and Z, you could probably go and get it. Or if you're struggling, you don't need to struggle anymore because this is it. But also, not the biggest struggle. The biggest struggle for all of us is self-identity. You know, and who am I? Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And then the Penguins there's no gravitas. They will fucking hammer you. Period. So all the yes people and the cap offers and all that are out of the window. Louis got the classic line. He said, Louis interviewing him at training, and he's gone, "Oh, one last thing, Romeo," and he's pulled out like a chocolate bar. What was it? Like a Twix or something like that. And Romeo's gone like, "How did you know that was my favourite chocolate bar?" And he went, "Thing is, Romeo, I do my research, son." That was it.
Yeah.
And it's like they have no filter, which is the magic that comes with DS, the beauty of DS.
But you recognise that beauty because it's one of the beauties within you. And you said about that kind of like that Tourette's, that Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo, that there'll be some people that don't like it.
Yeah.
And fuck those people.
Yeah.
Because most people will respond to it very, very well. And I think what you do is you kick out all the elephants in the room. It's like, right, let's...
Well, it comes back with wanting a comfortable time, like with you guys. To get the reality, the truth of human beings, you need to be comfortable and you need to feel secure in your environment with the guys out there and stuff to get there. Because you need I think you need nuggets of gold. It's like a football match. People don't remember the 90 minutes. They remember a nugget of gold. And I think in conversation, when you're dealing with sensitive subjects or you're going deep within yourself, you need to be able to be relaxed enough, and the people relaxed around you to find that inner peace where you go, "Do you know, I'm comfortable saying that." I think that's really important.
And it's I've got the word advocacy written down. I've got it next to the name of Ollie's mum, who's obviously the actor Sally Phillips, and she's been fantastic with advocacy and understanding. And then I kind of reflect back on the conversations we had about the old days versus the modern times. And I think we all agree it's complex. There's some things back in the day that actually we could do with a bit of. Yeah. But I think the vast majority of things we've moved on. And I can imagine what life would have been like for a family with a kid with Downs back in those 70s and 80s. Stay there, don't say anything, 100%. Stick them in a room, whatever else. And we've now got a time where we have people with challenges are seen. We've got on this series we have a lad called Kristen Coombs who's a Paralympian with dwarfism, and we talked to Kristen. He was fantastic talking about it. I think Kristen's episode will be out after yours, but talking about the way that people respond to people with dwarfism. We were with Kristen that day and we couldn't help but see people stare at him, even in 2024. But that element of then we talked to him about people like Ellie Simmons, who has become a great advocate and very recognisable. And I think putting people front and centre, talking about Downs, what can be done with Downs, what can't be done with Downs, some of the challenges are, but also what great lives people with Downs are capable of having and families can have. is incredibly important. And actually, I wanted to ask you. You might say, actually, this is something for the parents, but I think language is really important. And I know that you're not very PC, but I see the way that you're not PC in a good way, because you're just front of the brain, boom, spew it all out.
Yeah.
But I've got the M word. I'm not going to say what the M word is, but it's a word that has been used. And I imagine that most people with Down syndrome couldn't give a shit about that word, but parents and families
do. There's a line.
And I think Fraser and I were with someone the other day, and he used it, and he had no idea it meant anything to do with people with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think it is important that we do think about people that have challenges that we don't see. And the more we know about those challenges, the more we avoid using the M word, or we don't stare at someone like Kristen when we see someone with dwarfism on the street.
Yeah. I don't think you should berate people, though. I think you educate rather than berate.
Yeah.
And that person you don't know, it could be a nervous thing where they've just heard something and then it's come out. I would never do that. I think it's funny you talk about this dwarfism and stuff, but I'm a great believer. So we once a year I bring a different disability into the club. So this year we had a 5-year-old kid, and he's obviously I run a mental health team, over 55 men's mental health team, walking football, and I've got 24 amazing players, and I run an over 40s women's walking football team as well, and we all interact with each other, build my own community. And one of the guys, he come up to me, and I always like to ask about, his name's Felix, little blonde kid, 5. And I said, and he said, I know he's got a really rare blood disorder, and it's a type of haemophilia, but it's worse than that. So when he come out of the womb, he was covered in bruises. And for example, he can get a nosebleed that could be deathly. So he's been to Great Ormond Street. And I said, do you know about the penguins and stuff? And he went, no. I said, bring him to the penguins. Right, and he's been with us probably 5 or 6 months, and we give him his kit now, right? And because we don't have physical contact within the training until the older lads play a game and stuff. And I could walk that name into you now, and you'd go, "Fuck, this is amazing, man." And I get it every week, and I'm blessed. And I think my whole ethos has expanded as a human being, because now I'm on a bigger mission than I ever thought that I would be on, because of a gift. You've got to understand that they're angelic gifts. And when you talk about, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory, when they have petting animals in hospitals and stuff like that, I don't mean this to come across as they're the same as a petting animal. I don't mean it that way, but they do it so you to relax and you can feel symbiotic with that animal and stuff like that. And these children are, I've said it in the film, are a gift. It's just not many people get to experience it.
In their
inherent beauty.
Love. And that was the word you used quite early on. You always want to bring love. And what you get when you go...
Listen, we're all here for the same reason. Right? We're all here ultimately to find love, ultimately to get on with a human being, ultimately to leave the planet a better place, ultimately to re-educate people instead of berating them. We're here for this reason. And these children are like it's like a re-education program for people when they see it. It can either blow your mind or you kind of go with it. And for me, it's just such a blessing. While I'm like this, I've had 2 weeks off and I'm climbing the walls. So all the kids are sending me messages. We're sending bizarre messages to video messages and stuff like that.
And so people know Alan's just had a hip surgery.
Just had hip surgery.
I think people can earn millions and billions of pounds and not get the richness that you described there. I mean, that's what people are looking for, is that feeling that you're talking about. And that is why we're here. It's not here to collect stuff. It's here to have an impact. And even some of the stuff that you've talked about in terms of like your spiritual journey, you're sober now, and some of the things that you've done, and you educate and you give so much to them, it seems like they've taught you a hell of a lot in the last 6-7 years, however long it's been.
Thanks for that. Yeah, COVID was bad, man. COVID was fucking bad, because I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. Like my brain has to work in a logical way sometimes. Like, But it weren't that. It was the messages from the parents. I had to have what I call a fuck it moment. The parents were going, the kids are climbing the wall, the kids, because they're like being their kit in the morning. And when you explain that there's no training, we got a beautiful letter from Woody's mum that we had to send out what it was like to cancel a training session that we very rarely do, but if it's pissing down the rain, you've got to cancel. What it done to her child. And I couldn't live with it for age. It was doing my hair. Kids were losing their hair. It was a really bad time. And in the end, I had to, again, use your emotional stuff. And we even got abused in the park, me and my wife, when we said, fuck it, let's get training.
Oh, what, people coming over going, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah. And we put a poll out to the parents. The parents said, no, let's go. And it's where the Penguins really took off, really, because we said we'd do it on a Sunday, whereas before we'd done it a Thursday after school. We had Dogshit Park, which we still train on now, and every Sunday there's 100 people there, every Sunday, right? But it taught us that you got to have the bollocks to fucking go, fuck this. Fuck what you're telling me. I don't give a fuck what he's telling me. Fuck it. This is more important. Because the kids don't understand it. And then we had to make, me and my wife had a bold decision. Went, come on, let's go back training. This ain't working. And we went, height of COVID, back to training. So getting back to what you're saying, and it also taught me that being without them was like, I've got 2 kids on my own, was like that. It's like not seeing your children, or kind of like that. It was guilt. Of kids losing their fucking hair because of me. I took it personally.
Well, that's interesting you said because of me.
But I took it that way.
Isn't it? Which you shouldn't.
Because I will. No, I know I shouldn't, and people say that, but it's all right saying it. It's how you feel. I took part of that because I couldn't find I was trying to find a way.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find a way.
Boris Johnson's birthday.
He should have just gone to his birthday. But you're talking about the height of it when it was really bad, when like people were walking with fucking 6-foot sticks, all this shit.
Yeah.
Right? Let's don't get involved with that one. But I had to make a spiritual decision and get abused for it. Yeah. And I thought, it led me there. The whole of my life led me to that moment in time. And then, again, COVID led me to the Penguins where they are now, which is like... And not like it gets waylaid with the other teams. Like my men's mental health team, what we've done there, and kind of like the women's team, giving them an opportunity because they couldn't play football at school. Do you know what I mean? It's always trying to stick up for the people that didn't
women of that age.
No, they were just
like the generation.
I've got a fucking 81-year-old. She's amazing, man.
81?
81. Demographic, 40-year-old and 81-year-old. And I've got like 8 or 9 septuagenarians, 70-year-olds within the men. Like, it's release of life. And they all mix with the Penguins. And I've got people doing things for the Penguins. Like, it's just...
There's real like data behind it when you are of a certain age and you retire and you lose that sense of purpose and sense of belonging. It's like a human need to belong to something. 100%. I think that's obviously what they get there as well. And then for you, like, it seems like you have like a calling, don't you, that you can't quite ignore. And you had that, you know, when you're a taxi driver a long time ago, you had like a little calling that you knew came, and then you get on and then it comes back afterwards. I really feel like similar with certain things. And I remember, like, talking of spirituality, I went to India in, when was it, March of this year. And on the flight out there, I watched just a film of the Homeless World Cup. I don't know if you've seen it.
That's a great film.
Yeah.
And I wrote down off the back of it
game.
of like you go into India especially, and you're thinking about different things, and it's like, right, I come off and I've written my notes, like, using football as a vehicle to change lives. And that's what I get here. It's like the talent you had as a kid and the passion you had, but through football is just, football isn't the thing. It's all the stuff that it brings, like the lessons it's brought you, how you engage with these kids, how you meet different people, like how you're on this podcast. It's like football's brought you here, but it's like using that as a vehicle to change so many people's lives and learn all these different lessons. It's like, I wrote that down in my notes, and I was like, I don't know what it is yet, but I'm like, there's so many more lives you can impact through the back of this.
It's a really, really good point. Vanessa says it in the film, Charlie's mum, about not explaining Charlie anymore, and she always wanted him to just walk through a park and want to join in with the kids, and he does that now. But specialists were telling him it's too much, it's high hopes you got there, and he's doing it on a regular basis, number one. But she said it. She said football is global. It's a global language. And then, as you said earlier, Matt, about taking the kids to Bilbao and seeing their DS set up. And the honest truth is, it's not all DS. A lot is pan now. Like it's pan autism with it thrown in with DS and stuff. And for me, a lot of the kids suffer with autism with DS anyway. And I don't think you can regulate the two side by side. I think it's totally there's so much that the DS kids need in advance of that. But yeah, it is that. It's look, the bullshit of the Premiership, right? The brainwashing that goes on within the Premiership. We could talk a podcast about it. I don't. It's you're being brainwashed. But then when you see what football can do at grassroots level that I've seen, like all over now, is a magical thing. But it's nothing to do with football.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do with football. It's community. It's community and a spiritual connection. But football's the vehicle, but spirituality is the driver.
Even you saying about getting the taxi job. It's because you're having a conversation about football with someone that goes, I'm a football fan as well. It's like a mutual connection of this game. Here, you can have this job and you end up, meeting the people that you meet.
100%. Joining the dots backwards. I don't know if anyone's done it, but if you join the dots backwards in fulcrums of your life, not like yesterday I had a bacon sandwich, but like, so let's take this podcast for a now moment. And then you start to join back the dots of your life, it all starts to make sense. It's absolutely bizarre how one A leads to B. And then I think I'm a product of my life that's then brought me to a figurehead of responsibility that I owe to people that are less disadvantaged and really the parents, because I've seen the parents suffer. And I go, I haven't got any skin in the game. I haven't got a child with DS.
You've got loads.
I've got loads. But do you see what I mean? There's no skin in the game, literally, for me in that sense. I can always judge something because if the 50 kids went back to 4 tomorrow, I'd still be the same person, happy and loving them all as a 4. And it's grown because of a bit of notoriety. Within that, we're having new starter after new starter after new starter, but also that kind of stretched arms of kind of like, I don't care, come to me, I don't know. And we've put no age group, so we've had a 2-year-old sign up. I've got like 4 5-year-olds, I've got a 3-year-old, all training with a 26-year-old, all training. But we split the groups into how we split the groups, and now you're watching the older kids teaching the younger kids. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, taking on that.
It's so valuable.
That's lovely.
And going away from spirituality, probably the opposite. But people would look and go, "You had a coaching job at Cambridge University. Like, you're obviously not doing this to get rich." But how difficult was that process of going? Like, there's probably a job here where I know financially that this is going to be the route compared to, fulfillment and actually going for what you believe is the right thing to do. How much of a difficult thing was that? That's a really
good question, because we've subbed it. Me and my wife have only just started. We've got kind of a professional fundraiser come in to help that takes a percentage, but God, you need him because he wouldn't realise the paperwork and everything that goes. You wouldn't know how to do it, and you wouldn't survive. Basically, you need on average 60 grand to survive as a charity. But because I was earning decent money at Cambridge, so I was working full time there. And then working in the evenings with the Penguins. So me and my wife self-funded for a good 5 or 6 years anyway. So we was just ticking over and stuff like that. But then we realised that you had to make a commitment. My wife's got a good job with the BBC, so that's cool. But you just have to bite the bullet and go, right, don't know how I'm going to get the money here, but I'm giving up work. Because you was working, it's not just the training. The training is kind of what you see every week with the 3 teams, yeah. It's not that. It's the running of the charity. It's online stuff. It's dealing with people's issues. It's a constant. Taking the kids to Brentford every week. Do you know what I mean? It's not just the 3 or 4 days training. It's everything that kind of comes from that. It's a 7-day a week without a shadow. And praise to my wife, because I couldn't do all the other side. I'm not good on the computer. I'm shit with reading stuff, so we're a good double act in that sense.
Well, that's why Vicky's in a star on my notes, and look, we've gone way over, but I knew we would. Why are you apologising? Stop apologising. So I wanted to ask you just one last question to wrap up. I think of that 14-year-old kid lying at home with his leg hanging off the side of the bed. What assessment do you think he'd make of the life that you ended up leading? And I know it wouldn't be the life he was planning.
No.
But how do you think he'd assess it?
I think he'd say it was all worthwhile, the 9 months to create, because I always go back to, there's a poem online that I wrote, and it's called A Ball on a Wall, and it's about that inner child, what you were like then. But God bless him, because I wouldn't swap anything that's happened to me to where I am, because I wouldn't be fighting for what I'm fighting for if I weren't that kid lying there for 9 months.
Amazing. Alan Cochrane, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
I could talk to you all day. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I could talk
Thank
to you
so
all day,
much.
honestly.
Yeah, that was
Gold
good.
dust in there. Really
Thanks.
you've made me think about so many things in my life.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Football Journeys. Before you go, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a review, a rating, or talk about us on social media. Find us on @JourneysPod. Your support helps us to make this podcast a success. Thank you for your support.